Meatloaf is always a favorite of both family and guests. This week's meal starts off with fennel and bacon soup, and then Nathalie creates a very different Oriental turkey loaf to be accompanied by spicy peanut cabbage salad and baked and mashed sweet potatoes. It's a meal that will delight everyone at the table.
Sometimes I think the rest of the world is finally beginning to learn what the South has always known, that if you have a little bit of bacon or pork or fat in a dish, that's almost enough to do the whole meal. In this particular meal, we're starting with the fennel and bacon soup and then moving on to a turkey meatloaf. So it's using the best of all worlds. After you've fried some bacon for the garnish, and let me just talk to you for a second about frying bacon. What I do is I put it flat on a baking sheet and run it into the oven. I think that's a very easy way to do it. Another way is to fry it in the microwave, but then you don't get the drippings. And in this particular recipe, we have the drippings ready to go. So over here I have the drippings from the pan that that bacon that's draining we're in. So here's the drippings. I'm going to add some chopped onions. And this is another meal where I would chop all of my onions at one time. Add a little garlic. That's been in the refrigerator for several days, ready to go. And cook all of that until it's nice and soft. About, it takes 5 to 7 minutes, depending on the size of your pan. If your pan is smaller, then it doesn't take as long. Actually, I added the fennel to that. So let me go ahead and put the onions and the fennel in there together. Let me show you this fennel that I'm talking about. Now, if you don't have fennel, this recipe is very nice with celery, which gives a crunch and then is pureed, and then maybe you would add some fennel seed to it to take the place of it. But let's go ahead and cut out this hard part there when you can see it. This is fennel. It tastes kind of like a cross between, it tastes like anise. That's what it tastes like. And it feels like celery when you chop it. I love it raw, but it's nice cooked too. So let's go ahead here. We want to chop this. So I'm going to cut in like this and then across. I was going to cut off just a little bit more of that brown spot, but I'll just show you this now. You can do it like this and then down. You always want to chop or cut with a flat side down. Now, if you want to cut it even more, you just work your knife right over it, getting rid of those little brown spots. Okay. You would cook your onion until it's soft, and then you would add your fennel to it. The fennel and the onion looked kind of the same to me when I was talking to you. And then the fennel cooks about 10 minutes more. Then get some potatoes, and these have been peeled, and you would want to peel them for this dish. It's easiest to peel when you have water. Trying to dry peel is hard, and I like washing my potatoes before I start to peel them. I find they peel easier, and then I don't run the risk of getting some of that dirt to smudge over on the other portion of it. And under running water is much easier. I'm not going to bother peeling the entire potato just to show you this, because I have a lot to talk to you about today. So go ahead here, give it just a little bit more. And sometimes I think that it's just as good to peel by hand as with a potato peeler. Something very satisfying about peeling potatoes. And you see why you would want to rinse that. Maybe you can't see it, but there's some little dirty flecks there that are not perfect. So go ahead, I won't even add that. Chop your potatoes and add them to it. And then, as I said, you can have your garlic chopped ahead of time or not. It's up to you. Chop your garlic just like I did the fennel, and chop your onion. Now, you've got your potatoes added when all of that has cooked together. Then add some chicken stock and bring the whole thing to the boil. And then reduce your heat and cover it and simmer it until the potatoes are done, which takes 15 to 20 minutes. And obviously, the smaller the potatoes are, the better, the faster it will cook. So you want to have your potatoes as small as possible. There's my little garlic to show you how to chop. I couldn't see it for the peels. You know, if this was really detritus, if this was really refuse, there are lots of little nice gadgets that you can put that right into and use it for your compost pile. So go ahead here, slice in and across, and then down for your garlic, or you can mash it with salt. Now, after that's cooked, remove your solids with a slotted spoon, or you can use one of those immersers. What you're trying to do is to puree the solids. Some of them go right into the pot and you puree them. I see some of the other cooking show hosts have them. So here they are. Here you can see that they're still hot. It's steaming. And let me just push this. And you want the puree smooth, but still with some texture. If you were doing a family meal, you wouldn't have to puree this. This is nice crunchy as well. So if you think, oh, I just don't want to dirty up one more pot, what is this going to taste like with all the bits and pieces of the onion and fennel in there? It'll be just fine. It's nice. It's not something where you have to make a whole lot of bother for yourself. Now go ahead and return it to your pan, and then season all of this with salt and pepper, and I've got some fresh thyme that would be particularly nice with it. And add all that together. Clean that out with a spatula. I've probably buried my spatula. There it is, under the fennel. Do you know how to clean off this blade? Put it back into your food processor. It's goopy like that. Turn your food processor on. Flip it like that. Voila, it's clean. Another lazy man's trick. And get this in here. And there we go. Stir it together. You can always add a little more chicken stock if you want to. Here is a done one. Ladle it up. You can make this 1, 2, 3 days ahead of time. It probably even freezes very nicely. You should have added the thyme to it, but in case you didn't, you can put that there if you forgot. And then top it with some crumpled bacon. And that just gives you a little taste of some meat. In the South, we've always done that. We've cooked our vegetables with just a little taste. Now we have some Oriental turkey loaf. This serves about 6 to 8. This has got its flavors from the influence of the Far East. Chop some fresh ginger and add it and combine it with a pound of ground turkey, a pound of ground veal, or it could be ground chicken, but I think you'll prefer veal. It could be pork for that matter, or beef, any one of them. 5 chopped green onions, a tablespoon of chopped ginger, 1 8-ounce can of drained water chestnuts, and we've chopped those up. I have also done it with them whole and slices. 2 teaspoons of Chinese Dijon mustard, which are here, Chinese or Dijon mustard. 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. Some sesame oil, some Oriental sesame oil. It's got that lovely, dark, rich flavor. A half a cup of hoisin sauce or hoisin sauce, however you pronounce it. 2 eggs. Always crack your eggs separately. But you don't have to have it into a perfectly clean bowl. You can use a bowl that you've already dirtied up for something else. Crack it all there. And then mix it together. You have half a teaspoon of red pepper flakes were on that dish that I put in there, and a half to 3/4 of a cup of breadcrumbs. And a lot of that depends on how moist you like your meatloaf, what kind of meat that you have in here. Some of those things, if you've got more fat in here, like pork, then you might want to add a little more breadcrumbs to take up the slack, or beef. And then shape it into a loaf, and also just how much it takes you to shape it. Shape it in a loaf and put it into a greased loaf pan. And of course, I would do this with my hands. Just go ahead, take it, season it to taste with salt and pepper. I would probably fry up some of that and taste it before putting it in my loaf pan. Then you bake it at 375 degrees for 30 minutes, and then you spread a half a cup of hoisin sauce, which is just Chinese, or rather Oriental barbecue sauce, really. That's what all it is. It's a, as far as I'm concerned, it's a form of barbecue sauce. Spread that on top. It comes in 7.5-ounce jars, so just save whatever you don't use. Cover this loosely with foil because you don't want it to burn. And bake it another 30 to 40 minutes. Let it cool in the pan about 10 minutes before slicing so that it doesn't crumble on you. This freezes like a dream. It's delicious cold, too.
Nathalie will return after a word from her guest.
Hi, I'm Shirley Carrier, and I write and talk about food, and I wanted to talk a little bit about fats today. I think that too often we've been led to believe that, you know, there was absolute black and white, this one's good for you and this one isn't. The reality is that there are lots of shades of gray. And the important thing, and the big thing across the board, is that we need to cut our fat intake. We've had this great love affair with French fries, you know, that wonderful, crisp, crunchy outside coating. And a lot of high-fat foods really fit into our rushed lifestyle. But we just need to, across the board, cut fat intake. Of the different fats, the oils, of course, which are very high in poly or mono unsaturated fat, olive oils quite high in mono unsaturated fat, which is the one that nutritionists tell us now is really one of the best for us. So I would highly recommend using a lot of olive oil or canola oil or some of these mixed blends. Canola itself doesn't fry so well, but a blend of canola and corn works very well for frying. Peanut oil, again, the different corn and peanut, these oils all are high in polyunsaturated fat and are relatively good for us, but in moderation. Remember, all fats across the board we need to keep in moderation. Now, the saturated fats, the food industry didn't really do that to us to try to kill us off. The reason that fats are saturated is because that if they don't have those loose bonds, they don't combine with things. And so they're much more stable and they don't go rancid. And so this is the reason that a lot of products contain saturated fat, is for shelf life and to prevent rancidity. And I really, really would encourage you not to reuse oil because rancid fat is a true danger. It's not only some rancid fats are actually poisonous, period, but rancid fats have been implicated in the lesions in blood vessels in your veins and arteries, that initial irritation that starts the buildup in the blocked veins and arteries. So one of the best things you can do for your family is use fresh oils and keep them, if you live in a hot climate, keep them in the refrigerator. They need to be in a cool, dark place. A treasured olive oil is going to go, particularly a virgin or extra virgin olive oil, will cloud up and crystallize in the refrigerator because these natural products are blends of a lot of different fats. But you can keep a little out for regular use and keep your main supply in the refrigerator where it's safe from rancidity and will last longer. We've got different samples here of shortening, which is ideal in baking and sometimes a very useful product. One of the only ways to keep cookies from spreading so rapidly is to use a shortening which holds its shape over a wide range of temperatures. Flavored oils are very useful too. A little bit of hot chili oil will go a long way in flavoring a dish, and you can make your own chili oil at home with some onions and hot chili flakes. So just remember, moderation is the key with fats. They're not the enemy, and there's no absolute right or wrong. What we really need to do is just go with moderation on the fats.
For nearly a century, Le Creuset's colorful French cookware has been a favorite in kitchens around the world. From its bold finishes and uncompromised quality to its easy-to-clean materials, the brand's range of iconic products are as easy to use as they are to love.
Now, if you saw me make that lovely turkey meatloaf, I just want to remind you that meatloaf will freeze just fine. And in fact, I frequently will make a double or even a triple batch and bake a lot of loaves at one time or one right after the other, depending on how much I can get into the oven. Freeze it and then use it later in the week, or actually it'll freeze 3 to 6 months. I frequently leave things too long. They always say 3 months in the freezer, but my life is not perfect. I find meatloaf a very satisfying dish, and even with these new Chinese or Oriental ingredients, I should say Oriental ingredients in there, it still gives it a different feeling, and yet it's got that same comfort to it, whether it's turkey, beef, pork, veal. I've got a baked sweet potato here that I'm going to mash, but there's a little trick to this. If you're cooking some potatoes, whether sweet potatoes or regular potatoes, go ahead and cook several at the same time. Now, I prefer them in the oven. I think there's no doubt that a potato is much, much better if it's cooked in the onion. I even think with a sweet potato, it caramelizes differently if it's cooked long and slow. And for both regular potatoes and sweet potatoes, you pierce them with a fork, that's so they won't explode, and put them on a baking sheet, bake them at 375 for 2 hours. Now, that always depends on the size of the potato, and you can turn the heat down, or obviously if it's done sooner, take it out and do it sooner. But the long baking does let those sugars caramelize, and it's delicious. And then just remove it from the oven. And when they're cool enough to handle, peel them. You can do this several days ahead of time. So let's say that you wanted to have newly baked potatoes, fresh or sweet, and you wanted to bake a whole bunch one day and have them for supper that night, and then save whatever's left for mashing again. In fact, there are many dishes that call for regular potatoes that are twice baked potatoes, and that's to economize on time and also the heating up of the oven. Now, if you do it in the microwave, you do it the same thing. You just peel the whole thing. This is just going to fall right off. I might use a little small knife too to do this if it wasn't quite perfect like this is. Get rid of any little brown spots, any skin, and put it into your dish and mash it. I've got one in there already, so let me just mash it. And this is an old-timey potato masher. I quite like it. You can also use an electric mixer. If you were mashing white potatoes, you would do it back over the heat and add hot liquid, hot potatoes, water, or hot milk or hot cream, because otherwise the starch coagulates, it sort of gets slick on you. But if you want to keep them light and fluffy, that's a way. And then you add the butter as you need it, depending on how many you've got in there, to make a nice creamy texture. And I'm going to go ahead and use a spoon. I've got one over there to get this all mushed up together. Season it to taste with salt and pepper, and you could add some of that thyme that we used in our fennel soup if you'd like, or some other herb to vary it. So there you go, it's done. It's lovely, and it reheats very well in the microwave. So you can do that ahead of time. Don't ever hit your spoon on your good equipment. Hit it on your hand, which is God's equipment, but it doesn't break the same way. Now, a spicy peanut cabbage salad. It serves 6 to 8. And this salad is really better made ahead. So you can make all of this ahead of time. The same thing is true if you're slicing cabbage and you just core it first, get rid of the core. Well, there's no core there. Here's some Here's a core right there, just want to show it to you. And then slice both your red cabbage and your regular green cabbage. It's nice if you have both kinds. Cabbage is one of those things that I think lasts a long time in the refrigerator, and so I always buy some when I go to the store. So if you get a big head, then you can go ahead and cook half of this that night, the same night that you're having the potato and one of the meatloaves. And then later on in the week, you can go ahead and have the potato another way, this way, and have this nice fresh raw salad with it. So always when you shop, eyeball things and see if you can make them do for 2 meals. Then peel and grate your carrots. This is not very difficult. Peel it, and I've just got a regular grater like you'd have at home here. I do love the food processor for this because I hate getting my knuckles in, and I'm going to go ahead and get this part there so you can just see in case you didn't know. Watch your knuckles. Oops, see? Cut your red bell peppers into juliennes. Sometimes I have used a towel underneath this to hold it stable so that you don't get your knuckles. And another trick is to try covering it with plastic wrap, and sometimes that'll help too. Now go ahead and grate through it. Go ahead and it'll help preserve your knuckles. Slice your red pepper and your green onions. Get rid of all the white in here, and also there's a little unattractive spot in there. Get rid of it. Use your knife to get rid of the white. You can flatten it if you'd like to slice. There we go. Don't try to slice this part because your knife will slide. You know, a viewer wrote me and told me that. I don't know why I'd forgotten it from school. Now, chop some roasted unsalted peppers. You can do this by hand too, or if you have a food processor, one of those little mini choppers would really be nice for this. But to chop, let me just get this all out of the way. To chop, walk your knife over your peanuts. What did I say? I said something else. But anyway, chop your peanuts. You're telling me I said the wrong thing. And the small pieces fall to the bottom. Then move this over here, and you've got your larger pieces. You don't want it too fine. Now, mix together. You've got some garlic chopped in there and some green onion. I think you've seen enough chopping. Now go ahead and mix the cabbage, the carrots, the red bell pepper. Toss it all together. Get it distributed. And don't try to distribute this all with the sauce because I think you'll find that it's a little harder with the sauce because it's not a real. Oh well. Okay, now mix together your garlic. Where did it go? Here it is. I've got in here garlic, green onions, chopped cilantro. I should show you that. Here's cilantro. And cilantro is what it's called when it's fresh, and when it's dried, it looks kind of pitiful, doesn't it? And when it's dried, it's called coriander. The seed is coriander. Oop, I did hurt myself with that. All right, go ahead, get your chopped hot red pepper, or I've got a green pepper there, and go ahead and add with garlic and your peanuts all in here. Now I'm going to show you how to chop that pepper, but I want to put my gloves on first. I've got some plain yogurt right here. Didn't pull a spatula out here. Got some peanut butter. It was already in the bowl when we got started. Some red wine vinegar. When you're measuring, rather than dirty so many bowls, always start with one of your ingredients in your bowl and then add the rest to it, but always measure ahead of time. That dark Oriental sauce, which will kind of complement the dark Oriental sauce, and the hoisin or wasin sauce, and some olive oil. You probably could leave that olive oil out if you wanted to. It wouldn't be quite as good, but it'd be nice. A little chicken stock right here. That's cutting back. That's helping you cut back on how much olive oil you're adding to it. A lot of people nowadays are making their salad dressings with chicken stock to avoid adding more oil. Salt and pepper it to taste. Go ahead now here. I'm just going to go ahead and salt those and pepper this. And you can taste it. I'm going to do all of this before I go back and show you how to chop those last few things. And toss it right here. Now I always add just a little sugar to taste. If I taste this and it tastes too sharp or too oily, Then I would add salt and sugar to taste to balance that out. Let me see if I've got this all done. Now this can all be made ahead of time. Put it in the refrigerator for at least 2 hours and up to 3 days. And then just before you're serving, garnish it with the chopped peanuts and cilantro that I already put in there. If you want it really pretty, you add your chopped peanuts and your cilantro at the end, or you can add them earlier if you wish. Not quite as nice. And there it is in that beautiful dish. Now, cranberry crisp would be the perfect end for this meal. And I make the filling for this cranberry crisp ahead of time. It's in the book. And I use it as a chutney. Part of it is a chutney, and then I top it when I need it with the cranberry crisp. I think you're really going to love this meal, and it's good enough for company as far as I'm concerned.
Meatloaf is always a favorite of both family and guests. This week's meal started off with fennel and bacon soup, followed by a very different Oriental turkey loaf, accompanied by spicy peanut cabbage salad and baked and mashed sweet potatoes. Add a delicious cranberry crisp, and you have created a meal that will delight everyone at the table.